Computers have such beautiful font?
Because Christy did them.
No, Christy did not.
Because
Why?
Steve Jobs, when he decided he wasn't gonna get a major, since he just took classes for fun.
For typography?
Yes, and that's one of them, and that's where that's what he used his college experience for. So he took a class, and that is why the fonts are so nice.
Oh my gosh. I did not know that. I've tried to make my own font before. It's hard. Mm-hmm. Because it's the whole program is kind of, or at least back when I tried to do it, it was hard. They probably have better ones now.
Now we know.
Now we know.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Next Day podcast.
The next day on your discipleship journey.
I'm Chad.
I'm Christy.
And we're joined by...
Yes, Lee.
And...
Shannon.
Woo! Wacky Shannon is in the house.
Oh, man. We've got a 4-person team today.
I know. This is rare for us to have 4 people.
I know, but we have to limit our talking because 2 of us, at least, are very hungry and ready to go to lunch.
So we won't get into too much theology because some people's stomachs are grumbling too much. Yeah. No, y'all were talking about, fonts. I've always had it's not the nicest looking handwriting, right? It doesn't look the most professional, but you could read it. But I'm always like, hey, that's just my font, y'all. That's my signature font.
It is.
So y'all can read it. It doesn't look fancy. So Sable, she has fancy looking handwriting, but you can't read any of it. I can't read a word, but it looks super nice. It looks so nice.
She could have penned the Constitution. That's how I feel about all of that. It's very scripty and it looks beautiful. I'm I could study it and figure out what it says, but it's not just, it's a different language.
Right. Yeah. And I saw a funny meme saying, here's a wonderful quote from a doctor. And it's just scribble. It's just scribble and that's it. So
I love that.
Well, no, this is the podcast where we're going to be talking about the sermons you got to hear on Sunday. So if you were in the Element, you got to hear Christy. If you were at traditional service, you got to hear Preston. And if you're at West Campus, you are in for a treat. You got to hear Yesley.
Woo!
Woo! I know. But before we get to that and talk about Sunday, because there's plenty of stuff to talk about on Sunday, let's see. I guess I'll just start off with some news for y'all, for all our wonderful listeners out there. Chad, here at the podcast, I have been given an appointment to serve at 2 other churches in our conference, in our Texas conference, and even in our district, and the cities of Bowling and Van Vleck. And so I'll be the pastor at those 2 churches, and I am looking forward to serving there and growing as a pastor, but it is not going to be easy to leave St. Peter's, because I have been at St. Peter's since 2018, serving in student ministry and then becoming a local pastor and just being able to do a whole lot more. And it's just been so great of an experience, but I think it's all kind of led me up to this experience or this opportunity to go and serve in these 2 congregations. So
I really am fighting the impulse to boo.
Yeah. Boo. I was going to say, they're all tearing up in here. They're all.
We've all heard the news. I don't know how much time it's going to take to process such news, but I know we're all so excited for you. It's bittersweet because, we have to say see you around, but, it'll change our rhythms a bit here. But, this is part of the United Methodist Church and what, the United Methodist Church does to continue to grow pastors and grow congregations. And, so you're being transplanted into 2 different worlds, really. And it will be so good for you and so good for those communities. It's you're going to be such a blessing to them. So we're all so excited for you, but sad for us.
Well, thank you. Shannon, what do you have to say?
I'm losing my roommate, my work roommate. But yeah, I also immediately texted Chad like after the email yesterday and was like,
which went out in the middle of worship, and so I started to the staff, and I started getting dirty looks from some staff members.
Yeah,
I was like,
Well, they shouldn't have been checking their email.
Yeah,
I wasn't at church. Oops. And then I was still sleeping. But yeah, no, I am very happy for you as well, but like I said, I was selfishly like a little sad because my own kids wouldn't like get to work with you and everything. So boo hiss.
I know.
But
agree.
Yeah. So it will be very bittersweet kind of a thing. I'm still here until like mid-June, and then we're still talking about what the podcast is going to go on. But it's just a matter of what it looks like. We have some kind of big ideas with it, but we'll see what we could do.
Big ideas.
So anyone listening, don't fret. We'll keep moving forward. All right. Well, let's get to that was a lame icebreaker.
That was a lame icebreaker.
Lame.
Okay, icebreaker. All the grievances that you have against Chad now speak.
Let them go out. Yesley has a lot of them. She's been holding them in.
The biggest one is how long it's taken for us to get to the meat of the podcast because she's hungry.
Enough with this goodbye stuff, Chad. Let's move on. Come on.
We have plenty of time to say goodbye.
Well, hey, how about that? How about this could go quickly, but because we had a newcomers lunch and we had some burritos and stuff there, but what is your go-to order at a Tex-Mex or Mexican food type place? Like, what is I know you may like everything on the menu, but if you're just like, I want to celebrate, I want to have a good time, I want this dish.
Margarita.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's going to go with every dish, right?
I want to celebrate margarita.
Yeah.
If I have to come and do a church thing or something like that, then it's a Diet Coke with lime. Because, we don't drink and then come to worship.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. It probably changes for me quite a bit. I will say if there is I'm a really big fan of mole. So if there is like a mole chicken thing or something like
chicken
that,
mole.
That's good. I really love it. It's so good.
Chicken mole. Yeah. I remember we had that at midweek dinner, and I was joking up there. I was like, "Oh, did everyone enjoy their chicken mole?" And like so many people angrily said, "It's mole." I'm like, "Okay, sorry."
Yeah.
That's like if you say a gyro. I like a good gyro. So
many
people take offense to that. They say gyro. Anyways, Yesley, what's your go-to
for Tex-Mex?
Yeah,
I like fajitas.
Oh yeah. Fajitas are always a good option.
Someone pointed out to me that people who order fajitas are the most inconsiderate people because you have to take up all the table with all your mini plates. And
I agree. That's why I don't ever order it whenever I go with, for work or for...
If it's like, if you're sharing with like the table, it's like everybody's like, hey, let's all have fajitas. Fajitas for whatever. It's a great option.
I agree.
But when you're just by yourself, I require this whole table for myself. Mm-hmm. And I have to assemble my own food. Yeah.
I'm super exciting and cheese enchiladas all the way.
Oh, just a good cheese enchilada?
Yeah.
Cheese,
Nice.
please.
I'm torn on mine because mine would be fajitas is like if I really want to have a good time, fajitas, but I also really love trying different fish tacos. I prefer fish tacos over like even like shrimp tacos or something, but fish tacos, it's so good. So, all right, well, let's move on to the meat of our podcast, the fajita meat of the podcast, if you will. But let's get on to talking about the sermons from Sunday, and so we've been in this series over Get Your Acts Together. So y'all. Get your acts together, right?
Chad's parting words.
Yeah,
get your acts
just
together.
Get your acts together. So we've been looking at these different stories and things that we can learn from the early church and these disciples in the early church and everything they've been doing. So this last week, the theme was what? What was it on Sunday?
Bold.
And, it's very funny because this is Confirmation Sunday, and that's where I'll be chiming in stuff, too, because it was a beautiful Sunday with confirmation, celebrating the confirmands. They have to be bold to kind of go and make that step and step in front. A lot of these students are shy, and for them to step up in front of the whole congregation, that takes a lot. And so,
the parents are always like, go on. It's like if it was the other way around, they're like, no way.
I'm
you
pretty
can't
sure
make me.
The parents signed them up to help out with communion. And so when it was time, the students were like, what am I doing? What am I? But yeah, so let's talk about being bold. What was the scripture? It was from Acts 28, right?
Yeah. So the end of Acts.
Yeah. And so the very last chapter. And so Yesley, what can you tell us? You were over at West Campus. What can you tell us about your sermon and some of your main points?
Sure. When I read that this was the scripture, or when I found out this was the scripture I had to do, I was not excited because I think that it sounds nice, right, to be bold, and but it is hard to be bold for the gospel. We see it all through the book of Acts, how everyone essentially becomes a martyr. And so I mentioned that in the sermon, how I want to be bold, as in I want to wear a bold outfit some days, right? Mm-hmm. I want to, every once in a while, try this really cool bold lipstick. That's the kind of boldness I am comfortable with. And so as I was preparing for the sermon, I started to... one of my favorite saints is Oscar Romero, who's from El Salvador, which is where I'm from. And obviously for me, he represents boldness. But of course, he was also murdered. But he's so recent. He was assassinated in 1980 while he was literally preaching when he was assassinated. But so I wanted to talk a little bit about him. But in the research, I started reading some of his homilies. And one of the homilies was so lovely about how he was sharing what the Christian community is like, right? And the goal of it, and, how we are to be light. And he's like, and we help each other and we love each other. And when that actually happens, preachers don't need to preach because our own witnesses and our own lives are essentially a sermon. And if that ever does come a time where we would be silenced, he shares how that would also be, we will then have to preach but he says, but not using words. It's by the way we love each other. And I think it made me realize, like, I keep thinking of boldness as in like this very high up place of where you're murdered for your faith. But then it made me realize, but maybe for us, that's not the case, or at least not today. I don't think here in Katy, Texas, where we live, we are going to be murdered for our faith, right? So maybe this is not that kind of persecution. It's not correct, at least for us now. So then how do we live out our faith and boldness? Yeah. And sometimes boldness looks like, one of the examples I gave was greeting your neighbor even when they pretend not to see you, because I do understand, like, it's such a simple thing, but also, like, you do feel, like, awkward, right? Waving to someone. But the idea of, like, seeing other people and letting them know, I know you're here. If you ever need me, like, I'm available, right? That takes boldness, because I think most of us are more comfortable with, like, pulling into the garage and not having to greet anyone around you. Oh, yeah. And, being bold means you love your spouse and children, even when everyone's having a really bad day. And instead of including yourself and instead of joining in the chaos, you can actually be part of, like, the peace in your home. And so then I just gave examples like that, which is what God, it's not anything less, right? That still requires boldness, and it requires intention, because for most of us, that's not a natural thing to do.
The natural instinct is someone's ignoring you. Well,
You ignore them.
I'm just going to ignore them.
I know.
They
You just
obviously
kinda shrink.
They
Yes.
obviously don't want
Yeah.
to talk to me,
Yes.
so I don't want to bother
Yes.
them. I don't want. So I'll just. The easy way is just walk by them.
Well, you just feel kind of embarrassed, like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like, just want to shrink away. It's like the Snickers commercials, want to get away.
Oh yeah. I don't know what that's like because everyone always wants to talk to me.
Yeah,
So
of
I'm
course.
just so popular. And anyway.
Yeah.
No, but going with your bold thing, because that reminds me of a story, and I may have shared this before. I always love this story that I've heard a pastor, he was up in Tyler, Texas, but he was saying how he was at an intersection and there was someone there asking for money on the street corner, and how he could tell all these cars were like rolling up their windows. They were trying to get past this lady. It was a lady on the street corner, and they were trying to get past her so they didn't have to look at her, and so they didn't have to bother her. And so he felt like, I'm going to – I think he said he wasn't going to give her money or anything, but he was just like asked her, hey, how are you doing? And she just like broke down in tears because she said that he's like the first person to pay attention to her and to make eye contact with her and to acknowledge her. And that always stuck with me because I was just like, yeah, how many times we could debate all day, like, do you give them something or not? But I think we can still treat them with dignity and still wave to them, say hi to them. Maybe that's a bold thing and not just ignore. Yeah. Anything else on yours? Because, those are some really good points because being bold, and even then, like, sometimes being bold, it's not the most popular thing, right? Anything else on your...
No, it's just how, the last... That is what we read, the scripture was not just, the last chapter, but like the last sentence. And then the last word is without hindrance, which, right, to be bold, to be without hindrance requires us to be bold. But I'm curious to see how, Christy preached on it, because while Paul is writing this or doing this, he's in house arrest, right? So that is like my favorite part. I mean, all of the book of Acts is just so incredible.
We were texting about this, Yesley and I, before Sunday, as, you're kind of tweaking writing and all of that. And we were just like, man, I love that it ends like this. Like that the last words in this like primary resource for the first church and like Paul's journeys and all of that. Like this is where you go to find like the most historical information truly about like the first church. Yeah. It ends with this like, and after all of that like persecution and like everything we know that happened to this early church and these people, all of like pretty much all the apostles except for like one, right? And isn't it just John is the only one who wasn't martyred. I mean, every single other one of them ended up dying for their faith. And at the end of this book that chronicles all of that journey, it's like without hindrance.
Yeah.
And all boldness without hindrance. Like, it's just, wow. Like, so epic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know, Preston, he said one thing he left out of his sermon was they put there is a church that's on where Paul was arrested and under house arrest. Like there's a church building there.
Oh, wow.
And how like they're trying to live that out. I mean, I guess you could do that anywhere. I don't think Paul's intention was just there, but it is neat to kind of think of like there's this historic kind of place and people acknowledge that. So Christy, anything else on yours?
No.
Yeah, because
nothing else. No,
nope.
Just kidding.
Because you said you tied yours in a lot with Confirmation Sunday, right?
Well, yeah. So I was gonna say, so at West, it was not Confirmation Sunday this week. It was moved, off of the original schedule to accommodate Carl's, travels and stuff. But for us over here on the Kingsland campus, it was a big, busy Sunday of the confirmands, 12 of them coming around and visiting all of the worship venues and all of that, and just being able to see their church family and everybody that was in support of them and their journey through all of this, and then their future journey as members of the church and members of this local congregation. So I was very tied in with all that because with the confirmands, they get to remember their baptism at this moment. So there was one confirmand who had not been baptized, but was baptized on Sunday.
Yeah.
The rest of them had been baptized earlier in their childhood, maybe as infants. And so this is a moment when we get to, they get to confirm the words that were said at their baptism, that God had been working through their lives, that they now choose this for themselves. So it's this really cool declaration that they're like, I'm going to choose God's love back. I'm going to choose to love God my whole life and live that out. And so they get to have this remembrance of baptism. But it's a cool thing for the church to all witness, because we also remember our baptisms. Anytime that somebody else is joining the church or being baptized or anything like that, we do this together, right? So the church gets to remember, hey, we all share this same spirit. We all are all baptized in the same spirit, and so it was tying all of that in about what spirit we are baptized in, right? The spirit of God is bold. It's a bold spirit. We are baptized into, this family and into this gospel truth of, this love that is bold, this message that is bold. And we have the spirit of boldness within us, the spirit of boldness that raised Christ from the dead. I love that line from Paul, that it's the same spirit that raised Christ from the dead is alive in you.
Working in us.
Yeah. That's an amazing statement to think about. And what is bolder than that? If we all lived that way, to be man, nothing can stop this. And I love that's the way that Acts ends, is this nothing can stop this. Look at all of the persecution. Look at everything that the church had gone through, but nothing stopped the advancement of the gospel. Paul is under house arrest, and he's writing some of the books that we find in the New Testament, 4 of the prison epistles. He's writing these. He's, churches are growing. The guards that are taking watch over him are being converted. Incredible things happening. Yeah. Nothing can stop it.
And nothing has stopped it, right? We've been. This gospel has continued for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
I know I was telling my husband about it, and I was I'm trying to figure out, what angle to approach the sermon. And he's like, oh, right, because it all comes from God. And I'm like, you're right. That's the main point. Right. We're able to be bold, like you said, because this comes from God, right? It's the Holy Spirit within us that allows us to do this.
Right.
So part of don't be afraid, because don't worry, it's God that's doing this through you.
For if our God is with us, then what could ever stop us? Or if our God...
The musical interlude.
Yeah.
There's always got to be one. And I talked, I kind of, I don't know why, I guess the first thing that I thought of to equate this to was just, more of funny stories. But because I'm not the person that really lives this way, boldly, I'm more like you. I'm
the opposite of bold. I mean,
very
Christy
opposite of bold.
She's italics.
Italics makes a point. Okay?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It does.
You
notice it.
Underline.
But I was thinking about how I'm like you, Yesley, where I'll be I'm gonna wear a bold lipstick, and sometimes I'm oh, it's too I can't. I don't want people to I don't want anyone to comment on it. I don't want someone to be oh wow.
That's a bold move.
It's a bold choice.
Isn't that you're so brave for wearing that?
Yeah.
That's not what you want to hear, right?
No. I don't live. Shannon, you live boldly. You and you
Look at your,
you do.
You stand out.
I don't know. I feel that, I don't know, that song, is it Landslides or something?
Landslide.
So you get
like a landslide.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, and you get bolder or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I think being 40-ish, you just don't care.
I mean,
you care and don't. Does that make sense? You have more of a priority of you really don't care to please people. And the smiling at strangers and stuff, I do that all the time. Mm-hmm. Dave, my husband makes fun of me when we're walking to the kids' schools, and I'm like, hey, Kirsty, hey, all the time. He's like, you just sit there and have to communicate with everyone. And I was like, you never know if that's the only smile the person got that day.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I don't know.
I love that. Be you, girl. I love it.
Yeah.
You are a light, and it's amazing.
And you say that, like, I'm thinking, I wave to people's dogs.
Yeah.
I know.
When they're walking their dogs, I'm not waving to the person. I'm looking down. I'm like, hi.
Well, that's a step one.
Yeah.
Now you just need to go to the person.
Yes.
The dog,
Because
like,
the human also wants to be.
No, I don't care about them.
Yeah, no, just the dog. No, but it's, I think, like, yeah, I think I try to live like that, but I do very much get in my head about, like, oh, but, I'll shrink away. I will totally let the world, cause me to shrink away 100%. I have to, it's a fight to think the other way. But, like, if I lived like Acts, like if I lived into that and I was just like, I don't, like, without hindrance, who cares? Like, I am just going to love people, and I'm going to be the person that God made me to be, and I'm going to be bold in that love, like, and in who I was created to be. Then, like, yeah, who cares? Like, what harm can come from being the person that God has called you to be? Like, only good, right? Yeah. Only good comes from what God has created, right? So, and what God works through, right? So, I need to, like, live in that more. But I gave the funny example of, I was at I was asked to be by my husband, who is the coach of Jesse's soccer team. He's been, like, the coach of all of, like, the teams, but he was like, hey, would you help me assistant coach? Because the assistant coach who's normally there was out of town, and he was like, would you just, like, assistant coach? And I was like, okay. And, like, I would
love to see Coach Christy.
I know.
Y'all just have fun, everybody.
Know.
Hey, pick up that ball and just throw it. It's okay.
Okay, soccer field Christy is, like, a different Christy.
Your turn.
And I'm not mean by any means. Like, I am not, but I am, like, usually on the sidelines with the parents. I feel so bad, because I'm like, oh my gosh, they probably hate me. Mm-hmm. And it is a bit of a hindrance. Like, sometimes I'm holding back. Like, I want to shout, and I want to be like, yeah, you go in there, like, oh, Pastor so-and-so, and I'm, like, really getting into it. But I'm up out of my chair. I'm pacing. Like, it is a little embarrassing. Bold. I'm being bold. Yeah. But on the other side of the field, where the coaches stand, like, you're expected to do that, like, you are totally expected to be the one that's pacing and shouting at the kid. Like, that's your job. And I think, like, if we thought of our baptism as being on that side of the field, like, that we are like, we are supposed to be that. Even on the other side of the field, like, it's expected. This is who we are called to be, as a people that live with that kind of boldness, that we boldly love, that we boldly are encouraging to each other, that we are, like, forces of, like, peacemakers in the world, like, that kind of thing, that, like, we would live differently. We wouldn't let what other people thought be a hindrance to us. So I'm like, I need to live like I'm called to this. Like, I'm the assistant coach here, Yeah,
because the coach, I mean, look at it. The coach's job is to set the team up for success. Like, we have a goal, and yes, that goal is probably either to win the game, but also for you, the athletes, to do your job, to do it the best you can. And so thinking about that in our faith, what are we doing to encourage people to set them up for success in life? And, like, just always being encouraging to them, and and that does take some boldness to, like, you got to be delicate. You can't just be rough with it, right? You got to build relationships. You can't just shout at a stranger to stop doing something. Like, it's like there's something that we can do, but
because remember, it's boldness in love, right?
Love, yeah.
So it's not just I'm going to be myself, right? I hearing Christy talk, it made me think of, which I didn't even think about using this for my sermon, but right, this boldness almost makes you come alive. And I think it's even one of my favorite songs, but there's always, like, the phrase, you can set the world on fire, right? But, like, the original phrase is from Catherine of Siena, who was a saint. And she says, be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire. Yeah. So, like, that's a big difference from, like, I'm just going to be myself, but it's like, no, be who God called you to be.
Right.
So God is in the center of this. And when
And that's the thing. Earlier I kind of touched on, like, sometimes being bold means, you're doing something that's unpopular. That doesn't just give you the excuse to just go, well, people are against Jesus and I'm going to do this. It's like, no, but like, are you doing it out of love? Mm-hmm. Like, that's where you really have to take time to evaluate and really reflect on, are your quote unquote bold moves, is it really in part of the gospel, or is it just your selfish desire? Is it just something you want?
Is it your agenda?
Yeah. Is it your, and that's something we have to be careful with, because that's what that's really what taking the Lord's name in vain is like, you're saying, oh, I'm doing this for God. But if it's like, nope, that's not what God wants. Like, God does not intend for your agenda for you to get rich off of whatever it is that you're doing, or for, oh, I'm going to do this, but it's somehow hurting a group of people or hurting somebody. And so you just have to be, it does take some reflection. And that's what we as a church hopefully are coming together as a congregation and learning about that. And you're talking with one another about that. And before you just make any, decisions that just lead you down not the best path.
Right. Yeah. Right. No, it's good. And I think like boldness, like what you said, Yesley, thinking about it in this, in our culture and our setting and stuff, like it looks so many different ways. There is not one look to being bold. It's not just like, oh, the red lipstick, obviously that's bold. Like, there are so many different looks to it, and, I'd call like a lot of the books of the Bible bold, like, a lot of, they all speak bold. Even, is it Thessalonians that's like, live a quiet life and work with your hands. Like, in some ways, like, that is a spirit of boldness to live counterculturally.
It's not asking everyone to be a John the Baptist, just out there yelling to the, like, there is the more quiet behind the scenes. Yeah.
Right. But like, how are you, being bold in your walk, in your life, and maybe that's like, being in your family, with your family. Like, it takes a spirit of boldness to, to say, like, I'm going to nurture my family, or I'm going to, join the PTA, and I'm going to, be a helpful, like, joyful, happy spirit, like, cheerful servant, and just like be present for these teachers and administrators and the kids. Like, that's important, and that is bold work. And then there's like the boldness of like, I'm going to move on the other side of the world and be a missionary, like, that's a spirit of boldness too. But it comes in so many different colors and flavors.
Of course, I think of Fred Rogers with this, and he was so bold, and like, so his show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, like, even though he was a very religious person, he didn't really put that too much into the show specifically, but obviously the actions and everything and how they treat each other as neighbors and all that is very gospel-like. So there's that. But then the things that he was so bold on was he was just so adamant, as his show was so successful, he did not want any commercials. He didn't want to commercialize his show, because he was like, I don't want children to be treated as consumers. And that's all they're seen as, is just price tags or like dollar signs. And he's like, so he refused it. And just think about how much money, if he was in it for the money, he could have just made a ton of it, because his show is so successful. He could have sold dolls of himself and then dolls of all the other people. But he was like, no, I'm not doing that, because I want to treat these children with dignity, and they deserve to not be seen like that.
He also had, it was like one of the first interracial, like
with the cop and
in
all
the, that. In the pool.
And that was during during a time where there was a lot of racial tension. Was that during I don't know. There's a lot of racial tension at that time.
But I think it was with the segregations of pools.
Yes.
Because he had a bucket. Yeah. And it was just this very simple.
Just like a little kiddie pool.
And they both just shared it. Yeah. And it was like this, sweet, like, it was a really if you watch it's like a little quiet moment.
Yeah.
But that was bold, like that was bold. And that was for him to show like a bold kind of love, and like, an inclusion and acceptance of like, hey, like we are people, like let's love each other. And that was like very against the grain. And, but like, that's a spirit of boldness, and it looks different, right? Than like other spirits of boldness might look.
Yeah.
And I think we like to limit love, and I think we're scared of how big it truly is. And imagine being bold in love and including, right? Because I mean, that's what John tells us, right? For God so loved the world that it's the world. And so if someone is not included, then that's not the gospel.
Yeah.
Because it's for everyone.
Yeah. Well, y'all go out and be bold.
Be bold.
Get your acts together and be bold. Shannon, be bold.
Okay, go be bold.
Be bold. Got it.
No, this is wonderful. And it was such a beautiful Sunday. It was for me, it was a little chaotic kind of running around because with the confirmands, getting them to all the different venues and all that, but it's so beautiful. Just seeing the congregation and everyone just loving and supporting one another as these students confirm their faith. And I especially love at the very end when they were like greeting people outside the traditional service and there were all the fist bumps. And there was just older people coming up to him and fist bumps. And it was just like this whole encouraging line of fist bumps.
Sweet.
As we move forward in our bold faith, right? All right, well, let's get to our ministry shout out. And so something happened over the weekend. And so, Yesla, you were a part of that. And tell us about the women's tea.
Sure.
The women's tea party.
So we have a very robust, I would say, women's ministry here at St. Peter's. I do feel I have nothing to do with it because it was set up before I arrived. But there's so many incredible programming and events, and I was able to participate in one of those this weekend, and it's this annual once a year. I think it's always in the spring brunch, women's brunch and tea, and every table has a host, and the host decides how they want to decorate, and so every table was completely different.
Oh, okay.
And they were all spectacular and incredible, and it's very intergenerational. So you have all kinds there was a few teenage girls all the way up to, I don't know what the other eight, but very seasoned ladies. And even in the host is the same. There was all ages, and there's this very seasoned that know exactly what to do, and the younger women who are practicing their skills, right, on how to host. And so it was just very, very lovely. I think everyone's favorite part was to be in fellowship with each other and have a time to not rush around or just sit and drink tea and have brunch. And so it was this perfect, combination of modern with the brunch, but tea with its traditional.
Some tea and crumpets.
Yes. And so it was so much fun. And of course, it's all volunteer led, and the volunteers were incredible. So I was very grateful to be part of this ministry and all the things that the women's ministry does throughout the year to make sure that women's cups are filled, right? I think.
With tea.
With everything, right? With whatever it is they need, because I think we all know women are the backbone of society, in our families, in our schools, at churches. And so we often pour out because it is what's expected of us, but it's also, I think, the way we show love and we enjoy it, but we forget that we also need to be poured into.
I will boldly say that women are the backbone of this podcast. I will boldly say
Oh
that.
my. Oh, that's so sweet.
Anywho, but that event, it wasn't just church members. There were some people visiting and all that, right? And
yes,
so that's a cool thing.
Yeah, that surprised me because I assumed it was going to be very
to me,
church.
It sounds like that, right? I mean, I hear it advertised as, this is kind of more of an internal event. But
then turns out, in every table, there was a few women that had never been here, and so it was very lovely to see.
Mm-hmm. I love it. If I was in charge of designing a table, it would be a minimalist table. It's just
we did have one.
There's nothing. It's just nothing.
No, we didn't have that.
Okay.
No, they were all very, very lovely.
Nice. All right. Well, we're so glad that we can have events like that. And those type of events, now that one is yearly, but like we have other kind of similar things. They're scattered throughout the year. And so just be looking forward to those. And wherever you may worship, just be looking for opportunities just to be in fellowship and to go and live boldly with other people. Yeah. Well, y'all, like, I'm looking forward to some more episodes. No, like I said, we're working on what the podcast is going to be. I think I have some high hopes for like what it can turn into. So, but yeah, y'all just stay tuned for that. And we'll all see you on next week on the Next Day Podcast.
See you next time.
Bye.
Adios.